Hey now, good morning and happy Monday, PASW staff, clients, friends. Joining us for Film Scoring Monday. When we look at a scene and I take out the music, you think of the best possible choice. We've been doing this a long time. Please, new people, join in if you want to. Send in music to me and I put your music in place of what we're watching. It's been very fun. We had a lot of fun looking at Speed last week, and your film scoring results were just spectacular. So thank you and good work. We'll continue to do good work. We're going to look at an older movie. I kind of like to switch it up. I mean, very iconic, super impressive for back then with using special effects and stop motion animation. We're going to talk about, well, one guy in particular, but we're going to look at a very cool scene that, I don't know, I think still holds up a little bit. It's kind of scary. Won't be too scary for the kids, but a little bit kind of creepy. And we're going to have a lot of fun today looking at the film Jason and the Argonauts. So 1963, independent film, mythological fantasy adventure film, directed by Don Chaffrey. Yeah, we're gonna take a look at some of these amazing stop motion animation things, and I know that a lot of clients do animation, so hopefully you guys are watching. I mean, mostly the plot is it's Jason's quest for this golden fleece, right? So he can restore everything back at home. The movie stars Todd Armstrong as Jason and the lovely Nancy Kovac in it. So, I mean, the myth of Jason goes back to over 3,000 years. So, I mean, the story is a Greek epic poem written by Apollonius Rhodius in the 3rd century BC, so 3,000 years ago. A Hellenistic epic tale of Jason and these voyagers to find this golden fleece. So you want to go over it? Let's go over there. Let's take a little trip to Italy. Let's go from Hollywood to Salerno, where they filmed this movie. I said independent because it kind of was, even though it was shot for $3 million, but it made 2.1 at the box office. So, but it kind of held up as a very critically acclaimed classic movie. For 1963, pretty cool. Other movies that came out, Cleopatra came out in 1963. Similar. So, I mean, audiences were liking these kind of historical drama, romance films. Lawrence of Arabia also comes out. And then Mutiny on the Bounty and To Kill a Mockingbird. So, pretty good year for movies. Music-wise, 63 is what? When we're getting into rock and roll, right? In particular with a group named the Beatles, right? You guys heard of the Beatles? Beatles released their first album this year, Please Please Me, and I Want to Hold Your Hand, and this is the start of Beatlemania. So all of music, whether it's classical, jazz, everything is going to change with these 4 lads from Liverpool. So music-wise, that's what's going to be going on, rock in the era of the 60s. Now, there's no rock and roll music on this soundtrack because, as we've talked about, the soundtracks from the 30s, 40s, and 50s were scored by composers, right? I mean, it was, we looked at Max Steiner as kind of one of the first film composers that wrote specifically music for the picture, as opposed to pre-existing music. And by the 60s, we've seen the decline of that because we're going to see more independent, new Hollywood era movies with Bonnie and Clyde and stuff like that. And those movies are going to sometimes use scores, but more kind of for the young kids. They're going to use songs more, I mean, for the most part, movies like Easy Rider, they're going to use kind of, as opposed to epic scores. Epic scores come back when? In the 70s with John Williams. So just kind of a contextual kind of overview of it. So Don Chaffee directed this movie, British director. Also did some fantasy movies. Also did Pete's Dragon, one of my childhood favorite movies from 1977. But he made this in collaboration with Ray Harryhausen. Ray Harryhausen's so famous, so iconic, underrated. I heard him from Joe, actually. Joe at the studio told me about him. I think he went to go see one of his exhibits, I believe. But he was really well known for creating these legendary creatures. And we're going to look at the very famous skeleton warrior scene later. But just to talk about Ray Harryhausen, the most influential stop-motion animator and special effects. He was a wizard. I mean, and if you look at Peter Jackson and other directors, they say it all goes back to Ray Harryhausen, American artist, designer, visual effects creator. Started with Mighty Joe Young kind of in 1949, but he was influenced by what movie? A movie we've looked at before, King Kong. When he saw that, he said, "Oh wow, like this is going to be my career." And King Kong was really well done, that little 18-inch monster. It was really well done, but he elevates it to with his stop motion where it doesn't look corny. I mean, that's why these directors today still honor this guy, and that's why we're talking about this movie today, because yes, it doesn't look like James Cameron effects, obviously, but still pretty good for the 60s. Harryhausen spent his early years experimenting with these little things, and he drew a real distinction between special effects animation, but making sure that they weren't just put in for, hey, isn't this cool? They were put in for dramatic purposes too, to heighten the tension in the story. Much like Spielberg would do later with Jurassic Park. So, like we talked about with film scores, this is still early '60s. So this is still when movies, have epic film scores. And this composer is Bernard Herrmann, who did Psycho. He did a lot of movies with Ray Harryhausen, and they had a lot of collaborations. This is Ray's favorite movie that he's done. But the soundtrack. Mostly we know Bernard Herrmann from Psycho, which has the very scary strings, right? Terrifying strings. It's unbelievable that you could create fear and panic just with violin sounds, right? This has no strings, and we've looked at other things because obviously Bernard Herrmann's collaboration with Hitchcock is probably the most famous. The two of them together, and we looked at other films where he didn't use any strings. So this is another movie where this score had no strings. So why do you think that? Possibly so if you don't have strings, what do you have? You have brass, right, and percussion instruments. I'm thinking maybe he did this because if you have epic historical dramas, you're going to have brass instruments, because brass instruments have probably, and percussion instruments have been around longer. And there's something epic sounding about these horns, about, trumpets and all these, like the chariot races in Ben-Hur and, Gladiator, like we saw. There's violin players, you wouldn't really see them playing at these. I feel like maybe that's why he chose brass. So brass and percussion are the main ones that dominate this movie. So let's take a look at the scene. This is when 7 armed skeletons, they come up from the ground, they emerge, and Jason and his team have to fight them. And they were talking about, well, how do you kill skeletons? Because skeletons, are from the dead. And what they do is as you'll see in the scene, they use their swords, but they kind of go into the ocean because supposedly maybe skeletons can't swim, so that's how they get out of this. So let's take a look at the scene. It's very, very cool. So and I'll back it up a little bit. We're not going to score the whole thing, but you can just see how, and pay attention to the music too. Okay, let's take a look.
Those who steal the golden fleece must die.
Get down to the ship. Take Medea.
Come with me. And there! Is it another? And more!
So this took Ray Harryhausen 4 months just to do about this 3-minute segment. 4 months to do 3 minutes. I mean, that's such dedication, and that's probably working all day, every day. But you see it, it's pretty cool. I mean, very cool. Very cool how they just emerge, you know? Like, I mean, it must have been so scary seeing this for the audiences on a big screen. And of course, the music accentuates and enhances this scene, this this fear going on in their eyes. So let's take a look at it without any music. Still pretty scary, but I mean, definitely a great scene. But with the wrong music, it could look cheesy, right? So instead of like scoring the fighting part, I want you guys, I decided to choose the scene where they're emerging. So at the end, there's fighting and swords, but I want you to not really, I want to see if you can get something where it doesn't have to be epic fighting battle scene yet, because that would be good for when a war is going on. But I want to see what you can come up that looks very scary as they emerge, and see what kind of music that would it could be playful and kind of but dark. I don't want it to be funny or camp like. I want it to be serious, but I don't want it to just be this kind of epic sounding beats. because that's good for wartime. But this is pre-war, so I want you to find this kind of pre-war excitement of like something bad's gonna happen. So let's see if we can play around with some of these ideas. I know you'll come up with something great. So, and yeah, so just see what you come up with. I mean, and you can use strings, obviously. You can use whatever kind of instruments. Obviously, no lyrics because that gets in the way. But something that's going to create and emerge suspense, because suspense is coming on. But this is before they start fighting. So let's have fun with this. Send me some ideas, and yeah, I'm very excited to look forward to it. Very excited for a good week. We're gonna have a great week. Got a lot of good stuff planned up for you. So love you and miss you, and get it to me by Tuesday and Tuesday, and yeah, I'll see you tomorrow. Okay, bye.